In an interesting piece of irony, we find that the upcoming Black Hat Conference of hackers in Las Vegas is going to have on the side a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. This is a story on Infowars.com from Mikhail Thalen. He points out that a fundraiser for Democrat presidential nominee Hillary Clinton will be held this week at the prestigious hacking conference. According to cybersecurity journalist Steve Reagan, the fundraiser will begin on Wednesday during the evening hours of the Black Hat Conference in Vegas. Now, isn't that interesting? Because I guess it's an interesting case of whether you want to look at this as irony or hypocrisy. Nevertheless, it is job security for these people who are there, both white hat and black hat hackers at this conference. This is the presidency that is going to keep cybersecurity in focus because there's been numerous leaks. And so the question is, as Hillary Clinton is moving forward, as she retains her security clearance, unlike former CIA Director John Deutsch, who her husband had to give a pardon to keep from going to jail, and who lost his security clearance when he had a few emails on his unsecured personal laptop. Hillary Clinton, who sent and received classified emails, who exposed emails that were born classified, not only retains her security clearance, but moves ahead to become president, underscored by the fact, and this is another article at Infowars.com, a prankster, Joey Salads, goes through and illustrates the absurdity of this. He goes around and interviews for jobs, and he tells his employers as he's proceeding in the interview, and everything is going really well, he tells them, well, oh, by the way, I'm under FBI investigation. At that point, the job interviews end, but not for Hillary Clinton, because there's a different standard for her. So the question is, as we look at the massive red herring move, the McCarthyism that we saw in reaction to the newest set of emails that were leaked from the DNC, pointing to Russia, was it really from Russia or was it from somewhere else? Now, Motherboard has come out and said all signs point to Russia being part of the DNC hack. They look at things like, they say, well, there's fingerprints on it that look like it was typed on a Cyrillic keyboard from Russia. There's other things in the metadata that look like it's coming from Russia. But of course, as part of a Reddit question, they asked the person who said he's Guccifer 2.0, that said he's from Romania. They said, well, say something to us in Romanian, at which point he couldn't. So a lot of people have inferred from that, as Motherboard has, that all signs point to Russia being involved. Nevertheless, you have to understand that we've never solved these types of espionage things so quickly in the past before. Whenever you see that, whenever they immediately have somebody that they finger, it's rarely the right person. It's usually part of a false flag to distract people from the real sources of this. And I have to say that even though these things were in there, that doesn't necessarily mean that it came from Russia. We have another article, as we mentioned earlier today on the radio show. Breitbart had an interview with William Binney, the former technical head of the NSA. He believes that it's possibly somebody who is in the NSA or the FBI or CIA that has leaked these documents. Somebody, for example, who takes the security of America seriously, who thinks that there shouldn't be a different standard for Hillary Clinton, that she shouldn't be allowed to go free when other people would be facing multiple life sentences for what she did just with the security leaks. And so William Binney points out that he thinks it might be a disgruntled U.S. intelligence worker who's concerned about Clinton's compromise of national security secrets via her personal email use. And he went on to point out that part of what got so many people in the intelligence community upset was that Hillary Clinton exposed information from the Gamma compartment. He says this is essentially an NSA handling area that is applied to extraordinarily sensitive information. For example, decrypted conversations between top foreign leadership. And we pointed out many times that it wasn't just secret or confidential or even top secret. It was above top secret. It was documents that were born secret because they involved conversations and analysis of conversations that had been held. You don't need to wait until those are classified. You know that those are classified. And she set up a system to subvert that. So he believes that not only is there the possibility that these people who have this capability here in America could and would do that, But he even goes on to say that he believes that the NSA has all that information. As former FBI Director Robert Mueller has pointed out, the FBI was keeping that information. We learned that as part of the Snowden materials that were released. So clearly that is a possibility. And clearly if it was somebody within the American government, as I point out, it looks to me a great deal like Watergate 2.0, where we had people that were part of the FBI being deep throat. Even at the heart of the peak of the Cold War, nobody ever suggested that the Russians were deep throat. It was part of an effort by people to try to get Richard Nixon out of the presidency. And I think a lot of people are concerned not only about the criminal actions of Hillary Clinton, but the threat that it presents to our security. So we never can tell. I mean, if we've got Russian fingerprints in there, so anybody could put that type of information in order to cover what they're doing. Let's take a look at what happened this weekend with Islam, with the protests against Angela Merkel, and with the statements by the Pope that Islam is a religion of peace. In contrast to that, we have a top Swedish priest say that Islamicists have declared war on Christianity. This is a story on Infowars.com. This is a priest in the Swedish church, the Evangelical Lutheran National Church. It has about 6.2 million members. She wrote an op-ed, and she decried Sweden's reaction to last week's murder of a Catholic priest in France by Islamicists, asking why the churches are silent on the issue. She says, the genocide of Christians and other religious and ethnic minorities in the Middle East has been largely ignored for years. And she goes on to say that this priest was slaughtered like an animal. And I'll point out this. He was not only slaughtered like an animal, but it was a ritual killing. After they killed him, after they slit his throat or cut his head off, depending on which accounts you give credence to, they performed a ceremony there according to witnesses. And you have to understand that wherever Islam goes, it destroys the religious sites, the holy sites of other religions, and erects their own sites there. They were marking their territory. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand the history of Islam in Europe and elsewhere. We've seen this happen. It happened 1,000 years ago. It was going on throughout Europe. So you have to understand what this is about. But she goes on to say, his murder removes any doubt about the bloody declaration of war directed against Christianity on European soil. And that's the key. This happened while the Democrat convention was going on. And they were talking about every one of the firsts that happened, about the first woman to do this, or the first minority to do that, or be elected to this position. Of course, they were typically government issues as they were talking about. But there was an important first that happened that week, and they were completely silent about it, would not talk about ISIS, even as this priest was murdered as the convention began. She says, what is it you do not understand? What is it that you do not see and hear? Well, here's what they don't understand. The Pope comes out and speaks at a large gathering of youth, and he points out that it is the God of money that is responsible for this. He blames capitalism. And he blames a lack of job opportunities for terrorism, not Islam. This is what he says, according to the Wall Street Journal. They say this is fundamental terrorism against humanity. In other words, capitalism is the real terrorism. Capitalism is the fundamental terrorism against all humanity. So while he says that capitalism is terrorism, he says that it's money and jobs that will pacify people. He goes on to say that it's economic marginalization of Muslim youth in Europe that explains the actions of those who join extremist groups. He says they don't have work, so they turn to drugs and alcohol. To which we would ask, if this is true, what of the European youth who are going to have less job prospects as you have massive waves of uncontrolled immigration coming in and taking their economy down to third world status as well? He goes on to say that Muslims seek peace, in spite of the fact that he just had one of his own priests ritually slaughtered in his own church in France by these peace seekers. He says it's not right to say that Islam is terroristic. If I speak of Islamic violence, I should speak of Catholic violence. So then he goes on to equate routine crime by people who happen to be Catholics to these ritualistic religious killings by Islamic terrorists. It's completely different. And let me say this. When we talk about martyrs, a Christian martyr is not the same as a Muslim martyr. Christian martyrs, understand that the word martyr is simply the Greek word for witness. Christians were referred to as martyrs because they were people who had witnessed things about Christ that they would not recant. Because they would not recant, they were slaughtered. And this went on through the Roman Empire as well as especially the Islamic occupations. So martyrs were people who refused to recant on what they had seen, whereas Muslim martyrs are people who kill others. Not people who were killed for their beliefs, but people who believe they need to kill. You need to understand the difference between the different uses of martyrism. That is the way Islam twists the truth. And when he talks about fundamentalism, he says, in almost all religions, there is always a small group of fundamentalists. Well, what is a fundamentalist? A fundamentalist is somebody who believes in the literal interpretation of their document, whether it's the Bible or whether it is the Quran. These people who follow the literal interpretation of the Quran are the people who believe that they need to kill, that they need to dominate. And then he says to these students that he's addressing, people may judge you to be dreamers because you believe in a new humanity, one that refuses to see borders as barriers, one that can be without being self-centered or small-minded. Okay, you have to understand, Islam is not broad-minded. It is very self-centered. It is a religion combined with politics. And the worst abuses that we have seen from Christianity, Protestant and Catholic, have been when you combined religion with politics. That was when we saw the capital punishment from each group against the other. It was as much a political movement as it was a religious movement. And that is one of the reasons why we have established the free exercise of religion in this country. You will not see that under Sharia law. And coming up, we have Leanne McAdoo and Margaret Howell talking about the connections to Sharia law from Mr. Khan, who spoke at the Democrat National Convention. He held up a constitution, but the man is all about Sharia law. The Pope's priorities are not Christianity. They're not peace. They're open borders. They're globalism. And like Angela Merkel, he is doubling down. But of course, Angela Merkel had a lot of protests against her this weekend in Germany. As the Daily Mail reports, there were thousands of German protesters who took to the streets all across the country saying she must go. There were 5,000 in Berlin alone. There were several thousand in other locations throughout Germany. And this is in response to multiple brutal attacks, 4 in fact, that left over 13 dead in just the last week or so. And when I looked at this, some of the signs that I saw said, in German, it said, Queen of the Tractors. Angela Merkel, Queen of the Tractors. And I thought, what do they mean by that? So I looked that up and I did some translations of a German magazine, and I found an interesting comment on this, a magazine called Compact. They say it's a magazine of sovereignty. And in it, he says, Angela Merkel is the icon for millions who have now taken to Germany. And here's the key thing he says. The great people exchange has begun. You have to understand, that's what we have to realize in America as well as Western Europe. This is an exchange of people. And how is it being manufactured? He points out, it's interesting that when these refugees started coming in mass, that all of a sudden, in front of these marching refugees, there are signs, laser-printed signs, praising Angela Merkel. He said, who produced these, or did these penniless refugees bring these things with them? He said, quickly, you also saw it turn up on Facebook and Twitter. The chancellor was titled the Compassionate Mother. She was called Holy. You saw signs that said, we love you, in Arabic underneath. Okay, there was also a tip, he says, in the direction of the Syrian regime. The Frankfurter Allgemeine was very happy that they linked her with a set of images that would criticize the tyrant Bashar Assad. But it says it wasn't just in Damascus, it was also in Baghdad. And they had signs that said, the Iraqi people thank you, Angela Merkel. Okay, so this is all happening everywhere. And he says, if you think about it, you'll soon discover that the exorbitant increase in the number of people that were being brought into the country was not a function of any new things that were happening in these countries. There weren't any new natural disasters or any economic collapse. There were no new wars except in Yemen, where Saudi Arabia invaded. But he said you saw this massive influx of people coming in. And then you saw the reactions in Germany of the mainstream media. And as this was all happening, as Der Spiegel was welcoming the mass immigration as a kind of re-education. They said this. They said the masses are a burden, but they're also an opportunity. So it kind of reminds me of the Chinese characters for crisis, danger and opportunity, right? They say they force the country to be open-minded and generous and a bit chaotic. But then this is where the connection to the tractor comes from. He references a story going back a year ago. We had 71 refugees that were locked in the back of a refrigerator van and suffocated. Their decaying bodies were found by Austrian police as they were coming over the Hungarian border. And it wasn't just those people. Many other people coming in that way, and they say, is this compassion? And he finishes up this way. He says, what Bertolt Brecht said after the 1953 riots by the communists, he said, would it not be easier for the government to dissolve the people and elect another? That's precisely what's going on. It's the great people exchange. And Mitt Romney says, we expected Hillary Clinton to be like Angela Merkel. Yes, she is. Angela Merkel with a long rap sheet. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We have ended the big mega sale. Now, we have kept 3 items, though, this week. That's Brain Force, Wall Supplies Last, the amazing nootropic, for $17.76, normally $29. Leading competitors that have similar formulas are $60 to $70 to $80. That's 40% off. DNA Force, our flagship product. It's a big deal to offer 30% off on that. We're extending that. And then Vitamin Mineral Fusion, all the vitamins, all the minerals, the amino acids, the cofactors to help upload it. Great tasting fruit punch. InfoWarsLife.com, that's 30% off. But I'm going to go further. Boom, here it is. Normally you sign up for auto ship, you get 10% off. You still get that on top of it. I'm doing free shipping on everything. Whether it's one Hillary for Prison shirt or a Bill Clinton rape shirt or whatever it is, whatever informational warfare weapon you want to help spread the word and meet like-minded people, free shipping store-wide. Free shipping store-wide. So I want to thank you all for your support, your prayers, and so much more.